Hi Chris, how are you?
Good morning, Rod. Yeah, I'm well. Here we are, what we're on, episode 163, 9th of March, and we actually got a beautiful spring day here in the Cotswolds. How about you?
Yeah, similar. Lovely sunrise this morning. Beautiful pink clouds everywhere. That pollution gives you something, though. It gives you something nice to look at least, doesn't it?
Yeah, we haven't got the pink clouds, but it's just you can just see the sun, breaking through the trees and the clouds, and I think it's going to be an all right day.
Yeah, it's been a nice couple of days here. I got to say, I walked the dog on the beach yesterday. It looks like it's going to be similar today. Sun was splitting the rocks. No complaints.
Lovely. This is what we want. Spring is here. The year is started.
Should we do some follow-up and have some complaints there instead?
Let's get straight into it.
I think that sounds like a good plan. Okay, so first bit of follow-up, and we've touched on this in the past about ad blockers. So this was a little thing this week. I already had a piehole, which is a terrible name for a really good thing. You run a little service somewhere on your home network. Your home router, you point to the piehole device that you've got running. Could be in a Raspberry Pi, could be in a virtual machine, could be in a Docker container. And it intercepts advertising stuff. So you've talked about, I think you use Magic Lasso Adblock.
Yeah, Adblock on my iOS devices.
Which is a local thing that you've got to install on every iPad, Mac, phone, whatever it is you've got, whereas this is a network-wide thing, so all incoming routes get routed through this, and all it does is it has a block list on one side of it that filters out a lot of the advertising stuff. It's probably why my Verge stuff doesn't work so much. It's a really small, light thing. Anyway, they had an update this week from version 5 to version 6. Makes it a lot more slimline, doesn't depend on PHP, has its own inbuilt web server and all this kind of stuff. And the Register ran a little article on how to set one up if you'd never had one before. So I thought this was just a nice little write-up of something I already do on a Raspberry Pi 4 that I had lying around. That shows you how to do it. So I think this is a really good thing. And if you have got a Raspberry Pi 4, they're very low power consumption, and you can actually use them for your Tailscale exit node as well. So it's quite a nice little device just to have hanging on your network that just works.
Yeah, it does sound quite cool. I'm in a quandary with ad blocking at the moment, I think, because I've got it on my iOS devices, but what about all my other devices and my network at home? So this could be the answer to that. And I have run Piehole before.
This is the thing, rather than having to worry about every single device, and it does markedly speed up your network traffic as well if it's not full of absolute advertising junk. So I'm a big fan of this. It doesn't get rid of every single advert. There's some things that can get through it. It can be a bit annoying from time to time that you need to allow the odd thing like notifications from banks or something like that can occasionally. But the family-friendly element of it is that you can have you can install a shortcut for this where you can pause it for 5 minutes and then just get on and do whatever it is you want to do. So I'm a big fan of Piehole.
That's what I was going to ask, the family-friendly bit, but if you can pause it, then that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we might talk about this elsewhere in the show, but I think next week maybe we need some sort of demonstrations and run-throughs of stuff like this, as well as password managers, as we consider the tech that we have in our houses.
Security episode.
Security and just overall making life better episode. Ads aren't great most of the time.
Fair. I think that's fair. Should we move on?
Let's move on and talk about ChatGPT instead. So this is just a little story that was on Mac Rumors and other sites this week. We've obviously been talking about a lot of these LLMs over time. I don't know how much you use them in work. You use Copilot, so probably nothing.
I've flirted with Copilot. I've flirted with Apple Intelligence, but I've never found it to be that sticky. Next thing to try in a lot of corporations, if they're not doing it already, really is the recording of meetings, the summarization of meetings. But do you want every meeting recorded? How long you can keep it for? All of that. So we're just investigating that at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair enough. Anyway, one of the areas that's meant to be really quite good at is for integrating when you're writing code. I've tried little bits and pieces of my own Python code and things like that at work, just for, to see the way I do a thing and see how it would do a thing, and it's not always very good. But anyway, now it can integrate directly with XCode and VS Code on the Mac. So you can bring it into your coding environment, which is XCode, and it can help you code along as you go.
Yeah, I took a look at this last night. It looks quite cool. Yeah, because I wanted to get back into a bit more coding, and this has got to be the way for me to do it, surely, something like this, and get some help in there. I'm interested to see about this.
Yeah, I think it is quite good. You do need to be careful with this stuff, as we talked about last week. I think it affects your critical thinking about learning something to a certain degree. That, of course, it can help you with it, but you shouldn't let it take over everything you do.
I think for me, usually when I'm trying to learn how to program, I'm more learning. I normally need some pointers. I think I want to do this, but how do I do? How do I do that? How do I don't know, display this box or change the color of this? What's the right syntax? That's what I'd be looking at it for.
Yeah, I think that's probably reasonable. Of note and of interest might be an article by Matt Birchler this week, who we've talked a few times about on this show, where he does a 30-minute YouTube video where he live makes a task manager using an AI coding tool at the same time within his Xcode. Well, not Xcode, he uses Visual Studio Code, I think. But it's worth a watch, I think, if you've got any interest in this. I'll put a link in the show notes to it as well. But he actually released an app in the App Store, Quick Reviews or something like that, I think in the last few weeks, using this kind of methodology to develop and bring apps, very rapid prototyping and get them out there. So it might be worth checking out.
Yeah, and I do think that's what Swift is good for, and some of these tools, is how do I get a quick prototype? Can I just get something up and working? And then I think you're right. You can't just rely on that. You do need to gauge yourself and understand it, because if you're going to ship something, you need to make sure you're shipping something that's going to be solid and that you can patch and fix and take forwards. But it's just more help, isn't it? That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think so. But like I say, this is worth, the way it brings the code in, the way it highlights it as being in red, that this is what it's going to commit to your code so you can see what the changes are and all the rest of it in this particular AI tool. And obviously, back to our main story here, for ChatGPT, if you're a ChatGPT subscriber, then you can have this as part of what this is now too. So, I mean, it is interesting. Yeah,
definitely. It does look cool.
Moving on, something that doesn't look cool for Apple, and we have mentioned this before, is that a Brazilian court has come out and said Apple now has 90 days to allow sideloading on iOS.
I'm not surprised. They've seen what they've done in the EU and go, why can't we have that? And I thought last year, naively, I think more of the EU stuff would ripple out around the world, and I'm disappointed that Apple's actually gone more to the split the EU off from everybody else. But you can see there's been a world where there's more and more, going one way or the other, I think, and more people, I think, will emigrate over to the EU way of working on the App Store. So 90 days, do you think they're going to hit it, or are they going to pay some fines?
No, I think they're going to appeal it and get it pushed back a little bit, and then they'll end up paying some fines for a bit. But as you just said, now Apple has a way within the EU to do this. I think they're just going to end up with hundreds of app stores all over the world where some countries demand that this has happened. And I got to say, the political opinion towards American companies around the world, particularly South American ones like Mexico and others further afield, and actually not that far away in Canada, is probably not going to be very receptive to stuff like this. So I think this is only going to get worse for Apple, not better.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it is going to get worse, and there'll be more fragmentation, which surely for them is going to be harder to manage. That's why I thought more of the EU stuff would have filtered around the world, and they would have done it proactively. But hey-ho, I was wrong.
And they're just saying the usual thing, aren't they? This will harm the privacy and security of iOS users. And, of course, in the EU, we have seen massive reports of people's passwords in Apple stores being hacked. And, that's been a consequence of the EU Apple Store, hasn't it?
Yeah. Do you know what, though? I think for the majority of people, they're not going to do this. They've got so used to Apple's way of working that it's probably a non-event at the moment. So I think it's minor.
It probably is, and that's why Apple should have just rolled over at the beginning and said, yeah, allow sideloading, because 99.9% of people wouldn't have done it, and it would not have been a big deal for them.
Completely agree.
Something that is a big deal is for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and they're beginning to feel how Trump's slightly random approach to imposing tariffs is hitting them. So certainly it's applying to the tech industry in China, and I think Americans are already going to see the fact that their laptops and their computer components are going to become more expensive. But Hewlett-Packard Enterprise is sort of bracing for layoffs as Trump messes around with the tariffs and things. So the enterprise IT giant reported revenue for its first quarter of $7.9 billion, up 60% last year, which surprises me, but has news of planned layoff. I think we've talked a few times about Hewlett-Packard struggling. This isn't really a surprise, and tariffs is not going to do them any good either.
They are doing revenue, though, of $7 billion a quarter, which is way bigger than I thought HP Enterprise would be, if I'm being honest, because maybe it's over here. You just don't see a huge amount of a Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. So they're way bigger than I thought. They're obviously making some cuts, and they've got the tariffs to deal with. So it does feel like they've got some headwinds, I guess is what they'd say in economic parlance, over the next 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these products, and Intelligent Edge, I don't know what that is. Is that like an edge router firewall product? Hybrid Cloud, I mean, I guess that's a cloudy-based product. They're up against some fairly serious competitors here, aren't they?
Yeah, 100%. It's a really popular space to play. And, they're obviously competing with Cisco in one hand. They're probably competing on firewalls on another, Dell for servers. There's going to be a lot in here. But obviously, they've got a fairly hefty sized business. But the tariffs, though, are a concern. Obviously, a lot of tech companies are letting people go as a way of shielding some of the cost.
Yeah, if you make servers, and I always forget Hewlett-Packard makes servers. I used to administer an awful lot of them, and I forget that they make servers. And they used to make quite good ones too. Those import prices from America, from China on the components in those servers are going to be affected right through the line, from the silicon that's within them to the SSDs or hard drives, whatever the choice is, even the fans that run inside the servers, all sourced from Chinese companies.
Yeah, it's gonna cause them some problems, and obviously the tariffs are flip-flopping a little bit, but it's not going to be nil at the end of the day, is it? I think is where we're going to end up.
It's really not, and you're right about the flip-flopping. Today there's a tariff, tomorrow there isn't. I did hear it described to a playground bully who wants your lunch money. If you fight back against the playground bully, then they're going to walk away for a little bit, but they'll probably come back the next day and try again until you give up. And that's an interesting way of thinking about it.
Seems very apt.
It does, doesn't it? Another thing that is perhaps unsurprising is the UK government and Apple continuing to fight over that advanced data protection. And Apple wants its day in court, it seems. It wants to find out exactly what's going on with the UK government about this requirement to put in a backdoor to some of the services.
Which has got to be the right thing, hasn't it? They should be pushing back on this because once, as we've discussed many times, once there's a backdoor, it's not just the good guys that are going to use it. So I'm glad to see Apple's pushing back a little bit. I'm still cheesed off. We've had to turn off advanced data protection here, we haven't had to turn it off yet, but we can't sign up for new advanced data protection, can we? It's all part of the same thing. So they want a backdoor. They're stopping us having all our data encrypted end to end, and Apple are going to take them to the government to court, which I agree with. I'm not proud of our government on this one.
No, in some ways we're doing some good stuff at the moment. I got to say, I've been relatively pleased with the United Kingdom's response to things that are going on in the world at the moment, but this is definitely not one of their high points.
Agreed.
Speaking of something that might be a high point, certainly it depends where you mount them, Unify, I like that segue, I'm very proud of that.
Very good.
Unify, who we talked about last week in terms of their gateways, that they had produced some new gateways and things, have actually this week also, they're really on a bit of a tear at the moment, Unify, have put out some of their cheaper Wi-Fi 7 access points as well. So for this princely sum of £94.80 in the United Kingdom, including VAT, you can get yourself a nice MIMO Wi-Fi 7 access point, which I think is pretty good value for money.
That is pretty good value for money. I can see a world, I think, where I'm going to be emigrating potentially over to Unify at some point. I like the way you can buy it a little bit at a time. That's a really good price and doesn't scare me. I used to sit and work out exactly what I might do in this space, I think. But I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing from them.
This is exactly where I started. I bought the Dream router and I bought one light access point back in the, would have been Wi-Fi 5 days, I guess, is what it would have been at that point. And from there, my embedding in the Unify network has only grown. And given my hesitancy with some American companies at the moment, I think this might be the very last thing I ever think about ripping out of my home, because it's just such phenomenal stuff. Yeah,
it does look great, doesn't it? And they seem to be targeting a good price point. And like I say, because you can buy it piece by piece, it's a lot more encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah, and not to get too lost in the Unify rat hole, I also found about a product that I didn't know they made this week, which is if you want to convert any 2-wire cable to be Ethernet, they'll sell you a transmitter and receiver for that as well. So if you've got bell wire somewhere or just electrical cable lying around, they'll actually sell you a thing that you can convert that to, which is just phenomenal.
Wow, okay, yeah, okay. They're on it, aren't they?
I don't know what speed it puts out, but if you've got sort of faraway gatepost or something like that you wanted to get a camera to, or you wanted to get network access to, what a terrific solution to a problem.
Yeah, I do wish I put a bit more Ethernet in my house, but I think most people would say the same.
I wish I'd put Cat 6 in. I put Cat 5e and I feel that was a mistake.
Oh.
Well, the thing is, back to this product for a bit, it comes with a 2.5 gig uplink, which is impressive for such a cheapish product. I know my Cat 5e supports 2.5 gigabit Ethernet because I'm talking to you over it right now. So
yeah, which will probably be fine. So that's why I'm giving this the side eye at the moment of, this could be my route in.
I think this is the start. You do need the controller, as we talked about last week as well, but a couple of these lying around the place sort you out no problem. And they do the same as your Eros. They will do either Ethernet backhaul or mesh. So
Yeah, I've got Ethernet backhaul in, and this will be at 2.5 gig, which is big tick. So yeah, I'm going to be giving this a bit more thought, I think.
fair enough. We can maybe do an episode on that as well. Shall we do some news?
Let's do the news.
Let's do some news. So the first story is, unsurprisingly, with the, what should we call it, degrading relationship between the United States, Europe, and the United Kingdom. Starlink is a bit of a factor for people. A lot of, particularly in Ukraine, have become very dependent on Starlink as a means of battlefield communications or just internet when you're out in the middle of nowhere. And there hasn't been much in the way of alternatives to that. There is, however, an alternative for that. So there's Eutelsat, who make similar, more sort of business-focused endpoints to satellite internet. I think they're about 10 grand per station rather than a couple of $100 is the difference. But it's there, it's a thing. So, but apparently the EU are sort of really doubling down on bringing Eutelsat forward rather than a dependency on Starlink.
Yeah, so when the war started, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but Elon shipped Starlink to the Ukraine, which obviously is interesting now given America's position with the Ukraine, that they're now so reliant on Starlink. I'd completely forgotten about this, I must confess, especially with all the talks going on with Ukraine and Russia at the moment. So I just, had completely forgotten about this. So it does put Elon in a bit of a interesting place, I guess.
Well, not to say that being in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency and being in a place where you can do things like, well, one of your companies is providing communication, but also the rockets that get a lot of United States stuff into orbit belong to him, and who can award contracts via the FAA and others. Well, he can award them to himself now, can't he? It seems like he's very conflicted to me in a lot of these things.
Is he conflicted?
Well, he's not conflicted, but in a normal functioning society, I think the ethics of such a situation should be considered.
He should be conflicted, I think, is what you were about to say.
Well, he is conflicted, but he's morally, for himself, he's not.
Yep, understood. I think we're on the same place.
So anyway, I think this is interesting, and it's fascinating to me how quickly Europe and the UK is beginning to turn around on a lot of these things and saying, no, we're going to have to do this ourselves. And I know we've talked about it a couple of times already on this podcast, but that feeling is very much a thing where what was an ally and the real sort of spark for lots of technology and collaborations and the rest, it feels like it's beginning to distance itself from us. And I don't blame the people of America within this. I blame the government of America within this for causing this absolutely unnecessary rift between two historically very close trading partners.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It is. It is really interesting, isn't it, how much we were an international everything was relying upon stuff across borders, different countries, and all of a sudden I was thinking, how can I do all this myself? How can I bring it all back home? Because we don't want to rely on other countries, which we've never really had in our lives. I don't think so much in my lifetime, but I didn't see this coming like this, I think.
No. And sticking with the theme, there's been and also sticking with the register for the next couple of articles as well. Part of this seems to be coming to computing as well. So we've been very dependent on Intel and AMD and NVIDIA, all American companies. I think NVIDIA is an American company, but it's largely Taiwanese manufacturing, I think is the thinking behind it, for x86 and sort of chip manufacturing. And we have a dependency there. Both the European Union, the United Kingdom, and China have a dependency on Intel and AMD and the x86 platform and intellectual property of that nature. And what I've seen in the last couple of weeks and months is a move towards an open source or on a more open chip manufacturing platform, and that's called RISC-V, which is reduced instruction set computing, as you and I both learned about at university. But the ability to make these chips, which are open source, and you don't need to pay any patents to anybody or Intel, and it lets you sort of innovate within that platform. Now, RISC-V is an interesting technology in that it's been there or thereabouts. You don't get the compute performance that you get single-threaded as you do with x86 and certainly Apple Silicon chips, but they parallelize really, really well. You can get so for supercomputing clusters and things like that, RISC makes sense. And what we're seeing from China are some motherboards that you can put in PCs, and actually Framework, the laptop company that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, have also just released a RISC-V board for their Framework laptop. So if you want to play in this space, you see it beginning to evolve. This story is Europe looking into RISC-V to see if it can really push forward with supercomputing sovereignty. And then the next story, which I'll try and bring to the front now, is China doing exactly the same thing. It's looking at server-grade RISC-V as well. So I just think this is fascinating as we see the political repercussions sort of really work their way through technology.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it though, and kind of linked to our previous story though, where we're talking about using ARM, for example. ARM's headquartered here in the UK, 10% listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and they're owned by SoftBank, which is a Far East based company. And so it's quite interesting, isn't it, when you're trying to do more yourself, but yet you're relying upon, in that scenario, a wonderfully international company that's involved in 3 countries just at a very high level, let alone everything else they're probably up to.
Yeah, they're interesting times, aren't they, that we live in? I mean, in fact, that works really well, because the Chinese sort of curse was, may you live in interesting times, and we definitely live in interesting times at the moment. We
definitely do. But yeah, there's a lot going on in this space. I think a lot more people really considering their infrastructure and all of it. You're talking here down to the processor of the units that you're using.
Yes, it is. It's very fascinating, and we'll see how it goes. But the fact you can now buy a laptop with a RISC-V board on it is incredible from an American company, but one of the better ones, it would seem, at this point. But also, I think this is going to become more commoditized. We're going to see more software and hardware support for RISC-V boards. It's just the way forward. And isn't that interesting? Where Apple have pushed so far forward with their version of ARM, or reduced instruction set computing. Now we see this as well.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot more choice, isn't there? Processor wars are back with a vengeance.
Yeah. Speaking of choice, Tapbots, the company that make our Mastodon client, Ivory, is obviously not making quite enough money from Ivory just based on Mastodon, and have announced that they're going to introduce a client called Phoenix for Bluesky. So I think that's both a good thing and a bad thing for me.
I thought they might have done it all in one app, if I'm being honest, and you're nodding. And look, I'm the least social media savvy person on this podcast, but that was what I thought they were going to do. But I can kind of see probably why they're doing a different app, because it feels like Mastodon's more of a tech community. Bluesky is going to be potentially a bit more generalist, like Twitter once was in the glory days. So maybe that's why they're doing it. But it felt like they were just on one app, one subscription. But maybe it's a way of increasing their revenue.
Yeah, I mean, this TechCrunch article here has the crux for me is that the Mastodon integrations and improvements will slow down as they begin to focus on Bluesky. And I think Bluesky is fine. It doesn't have quite the same feel for me that Mastodon does. I think because the people I really like and want to follow are on Mastodon. And let's face it, social networking is about the people you follow more than the technology that's there. And the reason so many people are still on X/Twitter is because the majority of celebrities and things like that, or racing drivers, whoever they follow, are still there for whatever reason. Bluesky is closer to the way Twitter was, as you said. I'd like to have seen them to do it all in one thing.
Yeah, and they're probably going to put more effort into Bluesky because it's a much bigger population, so the opportunity is way bigger.
At the same time, the reason they had to leave X/Twitter is because they decided they were going to change the API and how third-party clients interacted with it, and there's no saying Bluesky wouldn't do the same thing.
Yeah, it's true. You never know when they get even bigger. Will they take a leaf out of Twitter's book?
Yeah, whereas the federation side of Mastodon doesn't allow. Anyway, it is interesting, and Tapbots make great software. If a social network feels better when they're there, and of course, I'll probably end up picking up Phoenix for Bluesky when it's released because they make the best products. But isn't it weird that it's the software that you get used to using on the platform rather than the platform itself that's part of what makes it so great?
Yeah, completely.
It says a lot about why we've picked the computers we have, really. A choice I've made that I'm beginning to think twice about, and the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed I'm back on the Zen browser rather than raw Firefox anymore, is that Firefox has made some interesting choices in terms of licensing over the last couple of weeks. Have you seen any of these?
I have not at all, if I'm being honest. I'm still a very much hardened Safari user.
Yeah, well, I as with many things, I don't like just being... I can't think of the correct phrase, but I don't like being beholden to the platform owner's choice all the time. I think I invest too much of myself in Apple all the time and just go with the defaults. And therefore I like to kick back. And one of the reasons I kicked back on was an alternative browser. I wanted a browser that would work on any platform that I chose, except iOS, obviously, because iOS is still a bit broken when it comes to that, at least for those of us not in the EU. Anyway, Firefox, as we've talked about many times in this podcast, is a really good browser. The problem is Mozilla, who own Firefox effectively and develop Firefox, are becoming an increasingly dodgy company. In the sense that they changed the terms of service the last couple of weeks ago to say things like the Firefox browser is the only major browser backed by a not-for-profit that doesn't sell your personal data to advertisers while helping you protect your personal information. That's fairly clear the way it used to read. They changed it to the Firefox browser, the only major browser backed by a not-for-profit that helps you protect your personal information. So where's the doesn't sell your data to advertisers gone?
Well, it's gone, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they're probably going to need to make some money, I guess, and they're struggling. So that's a way of shoring up their balance sheet.
Yep. Then, the Firefox browser is super free, actually, no hidden costs or anything. You don't pay anything to use it, and we don't sell your personal data. To now, the Firefox browser is free, super free, no hidden costs or anything. You don't pay anything to use it.
They've just shortened that sentence a little bit, haven't they?
But they've taken something quite important out of it.
They have. And they've removed that, and we don't sell your personal data, which you can see where they're going with this.
Well, they're going, A, they're going to sell your personal data, and B, it's going to an AI or an LLM development company.
Yeah, because again, they got to make the money, haven't they?
Yeah, particularly since the whole nest egg from Google thing's about to be pulled, if it hasn't already.
Nest egg, yes, quite. So this is where Google pay them some money to have their search engine be the default. Exactly
that. So I think this is a bit of a scummy move on the behalf of Firefox. On one level, I understand it. It's not cheap to keep a browser running, particularly when you've only got less than 5% market share. So it's got to be a really troublesome for them. At the same time, we know Google's about to get broken up, which I think actually we dodged over that story. Actually, I need to come back to that.
We spoke about it a long time ago, didn't we? But we haven't circled back to it. But
there's been moves this week, and I'm really annoyed. Actually, I thought I had it in the notes, but never mind. It looks like Trump's Department of Justice is going to continue to pursue this in the same way that the Biden Department of Justice was. So even though Google has given them all this money, it's maybe not gone so well for Google.
Maybe they need to give more.
Yeah, maybe they need to give even more. Let's move on. Let's talk about iOS users and Outlook. Do you want to talk about this story?
Yes. So when you put this in the show notes, I looked and thought, I haven't had any problems with Outlook this year. And but what I was thinking was, this is where you're using Microsoft Outlook as an email service, not where you're using Microsoft Outlook app on your phone. And it's kind of the same problem that Apple have got with Apple TV, in that you're using the same name to mean multiple things. So I first saw this headline and thought, what's wrong with my native Microsoft Outlook app on my iPhone? Oh no, it's not that. It's the fact that people are using Mail with Microsoft Outlook and it's struggling to authenticate. It keeps falling over, which is not a great look for Microsoft, because obviously they've got have squillions of users using Outlook.com as their email service and on iOS. And so they've got a bug there where you can log in to get your email, which a lot of people, say if I'd set this up for my parents, wouldn't even know they could go to the website and do it or use a different app. They're just going to be sat there going, I got no new email maybe, or why does it keep asking me to log in? So really not a good look for Microsoft at all.
No, it's not good at all. They seem to be having a few little problems like this, and the fact that it's gone on and on and on is even more problematic for one of the largest software companies in the world. I mean, this should be on one of the largest computing platforms in the world. You need to get this sorted out, Microsoft.
Yes, like I say, not a good look. Yeah, like I said, I just completely had a mind blank that they'd used that Outlook.com was still an email service that people use.
Well, every time I still see a Hotmail user, I'm surprised, I must say.
Yeah, people are holding on to those, aren't they?
They're holding on to those. Something else that's being held on to is Digg. Did you use Digg back in the day?
I did not use Digg, but I'm very much aware of it. I used to run various websites that would have Digg integration in them.
I was a bit of a Digg fan. It used to call itself the home page of the internet. If you want to see what stories, and the point of Digg, it's been largely replaced by Reddit these days, I'd say. It was socially pushed stories that weren't really moderated that would come to the front, and people would upvote the stories to make sure they got to the front of the web page. Something was really popular, you'd see it blowing up, it would get reported and upvoted all the time, and that's the way it would work. And then there'd be comments in the same way that Reddit has now. It's less of a community feeling than Reddit, more of a homepage full of bookmarks, effectively, so you could see what was going on, not pushed by the BBC or CNN or whoever would be the sort of news provider, but citizen journalism. Anyway, it got bought, it went away. Kevin Rose, one of the founders, I think, is now a venture capitalist. He makes lots of money from investing in that kind of stuff. Anyway, long story short, they're going to bring it back.
Woo!
Yeah, I guess.
Digg comes back. It's quite a good name, Digg, though, wasn't it? I like the name.
It was a good name. The difference this time is that the algorithm is going to go and find the stories, not people. And I guess you'll still upvote them at that point, but they're going big on AI, finding these stories and resolving them for you, rather than citizen journalism.
Yeah, okay. I can see why they're doing that. I guess it kind of makes sense.
I guess it kind of makes sense, but is it going to be any better than something like a Reddit?
True. And are they going to be able to make inroads into getting that market share?
And I think the problem with stuff like this is they're betting on nostalgia. Unless it's a really good product, they want people that used Digg back in the day, who've got fond memories of it, to come and use it again. My kids wouldn't go and look at Digg.
And surely nostalgia only gets you so many users. Probably just gets you up and running, maybe.
Yeah, and Slashdot has died death over the years. I don't remember Slashdot from back in the day as well, but that used to be a huge thing too.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that.
There you go, Slashdot. Something that I haven't forgotten about that I think looks really good and will hopefully never come to light, some of them, are Lenovo's increasingly wacky designs for laptops. Did you see some of these from Mobile World Conference this week?
No, I hadn't, but I did read the title. I thought, solar powered laptops. Part of me thought, that sounds great. And then I thought, actually, how often do I sit outside and solar panel would actually be of any use to me? They've got some interesting stuff. It's quite nice in a way, I think, to see them doing some innovation, because laptops largely look the same for the last 10 years. Like, there's not been anything that's moved it on, since we've had the aluminium shells and casings. They all look very similar. So I quite like to see a bit of innovation in this space.
Yeah, it was funny listening to Upgrade this week, where they did sort of nostalgic Apple products, basically, most influential Apple products, and they talk about the original MacBook Air that gave us the unibody shape, really. Had a little door and everything, but that shape, launched in 2007, something like that, has been every Apple laptop ever since, and actually almost every laptop since.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
It has. Anyway, these are quite interesting. They've got a solar-powered one. They've got one called ThinkBook Flip, where you have this extra screen or folding screen you can unravel to give yourself a super tall display.
That's kind of cool, but then part of me thought, if you sat on a train using that, you're really broadcasting what you're doing to everybody around you. Not the person obviously in front of you, but everybody else around you. But it's quite a thing, is it? Like, what's the weight of this going to be? How practical is this, etc.?
I think it's just a concept. I don't know if it'll come to market, but there is that occasion when you need a little bit more screen space if you're sort of restricted on your laptop. Maybe not on a train, but when you're sat in Starbucks, you could get away with this.
Starbucks, or if you hot desk and you're going in the office, sometimes you're like me in a shed, and sometimes you're in the house, and sometimes you're in an office. You've got what you need with you. That does sound quite appealing.
I think it's a good idea, and it's nice to see a bit of innovation. That's the be all and end all of it, and well done Lenovo for doing something different.
Yeah, like I said, it'd be good to see some innovation in here. I wonder if any of these will become mainstream.
The solar-powered thing's interesting. Yeah, you go off-grid, it'd be quite nice to have your laptop. Like you say, I don't think you're going to sit outside of many park benches and do this, but people do.
Yeah, people do. It's fair.
Tell us about DuckDuckGo and AI.
DuckDuckGo, one of my favourite places to use on the internet. So I do use DuckDuckGo for everything. I've not used their assist yet, though, so I must confess. So DuckDuckGo is doing what everybody else is doing. They get into AI on their search results. So they've got a thing called assist, and I don't know why everybody with AI seems to have adopted this sort of star lines, sort of logo. They all seem to do their own take on it. So they've been playing with it, but it's now live for everybody. So basically, you can have ChatGPT 4.0 go away and help you summarize things and use it for searching and come back with answers. Have you played with this at all? Because I haven't, and I don't know how it compares to others.
I haven't played with it at all. I've kind of vaguely slipped back to Google of recent in some of my devices, not all of them, and it doesn't present itself in iOS as sort of the default search thing yet. But no, I haven't. I think it's just interesting. Everybody feels they've got to have skin in the game here.
Yeah, I think you're right. They're all doing it because obviously they don't want people leaving them to go elsewhere, I guess. Like I say, for me, I'm a little interested because I do like DuckDuckGo. I just still haven't got on the AI train yet. Maybe I'm a bit slow to it.
There's been a lot of stories this week about Apple delaying the next version of Siri because of its failing to work well as an LLM. Gruber's been talking about it a lot, about how dumb Siri still is, even though its personal context isn't working. Apple are now saying, and we should probably have put it in the links actually, Apple are now saying that it'll be delayed until at least iOS 19. It's not going to be in the 18. I'm beginning to wonder it'll even make that. It might be in the 20 releases.
Yeah, or maybe it's in 19, but it's a year down the road. And this is why I do think Apple, and hopefully they've learned from this, they've advertised stuff too early, and they've been trying to get people using their tech, but it's not there, is it? The tech isn't there, but you're trying to hook it on to selling new phones. I think they've been on a bit sticky wicket. You know, they're promising this functionality, but it's just not ready for prime time yet. And I've not been enjoying that, I must confess.
No, I think it's oversold, is what it is. I will put this as we're talking about it.
It's oversold, underdeveloped, and marketed everywhere. So for me, they've ticked all the wrong boxes.
And they've even pulled some of their advertising. The Bella Ramsey advert, when she was trying to get Siri to remind her who she was talking to in the room, that advert's been pulled. This is a problem for them. They sold the iPhone 16 on the promise of Apple Intelligence. Everything except the iPads we're going to talk about soon support Apple Intelligence, and it's just not there. And the features it has got, I've switched off. I'm not missing them at all. You repeatedly tell me you don't get any benefit from the ones that are there. Smarter Siri has never got smarter. I've gone back to old dumb Siri, and it's just as dumb as ever it was. And Gruber's experimentation about, here I am on a phone, tell me how to change the settings on this so I can switch something off. It didn't give him the right answers on a very limited set of devices that he's using. I think this is a real problem for the company.
It's rubbish is what it is. I think it is a real problem. They've rushed it out to try and catch up, haven't delivered. They've then marketed the hell out of it and still haven't delivered. So I'm with you on this.
And just to finish where we started, I missed this story, I apologise. This is just a link, we won't talk about it in any great detail. The Trump's Department of Justice still says Google should be broken up. So that's an article from The Verge from March the 8th. So yeah, you're not getting out of it, Google.
I'd love to see what their proposal is to not break it up, and then assuming it goes forward, what their proposal is to break it up. You know, where would they carve out all the different sections? It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, again, interesting times. Should we do a super fast car corner?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so first story's for you because it's about BMW and CarPlay.
And there's literally a BMW in the screen grab, which I like the look of. That could actually be my car. This is awesome. So on some BMWs, and I don't think they're going to do this on newer BMWs, it supports apps, CarPlay apps, showing you content in the middle of the cluster, which you can see in the screen. So when you use Apple Maps, you can have it on the main display, but you can also have it in the cluster, so you can see your directions there, which I love, and it's why I really use Apple Maps in my car. So what they've now happened with Waze is Waze are going to do the same bit of technology, so you can have the navigation in the cluster, and this is fantastic. I don't know why other apps haven't done it. I guess because there's not many people with cars that have this support for CarPlay in the cluster, but it's fantastic. And now Waze does it. Probably see me going back to Waze a little bit here because I prefer Waze for the notifications that they do when you're driving along, like there's a car on the hard shoulder, you know, there's a big pothole coming up. So I'm going to go back to Waze when I commute to work next week and try it out.
I think it's really cool. It's interesting that it's not just BMW. Other cars like Polestar drivers should be able to see this too in Ford Sync 4. So it's interesting that Waze have managed to do this before Apple.
No. So Apple do it, but up until now, only Apple have done it.
I'm with you.
So it's great ways to do it because, like I say, it did take me off Waze a little bit because I personally, on the entertainment screen, I usually have my music, and then in the cluster, I've got the sat nav. So this will get me back onto Waze. I think I'm going to try this out.
I understand. Fair enough. Something else that I understand it might have the potential to be quite cool is Volkswagen's new ID.everyone, an ID for everyone. It's a small car, sort of Lupo Polo, smaller than Polo size, up size maybe. Sub 20,000 euros, well, 25,000 euros. Small concept car that they're almost certainly going to bring to market. I think this looks terrific.
It looks great. It looks a little bit like the Renault 5 from the front that Renault have just relaunched, the new electric car. This looks fantastic. Like, people doing short journeys should be able to use electric. I think this is cool. I usually quite like a VW. I know they've had some missteps more recently, but I quite like the look of this.
I do too. They've also doubled down. They're going to commit to more buttons rather than just touchscreens, which I think is also a good thing. As I look at the interior of this proposed car, the speckledy dashboard's very like my Volvo, I got to say. I wonder if it's recycled plastics. Actually, it is recycled plastics, just like my Volvo.
Yeah, I think this looks great. Come on, VW, get back to what you do good. You make good cars for everybody, and you've lost your way a little bit. So I'm quite looking forward to this.
I think this is good, and it's the right competition for incoming Chinese cars to the market, is that you produce smaller, cheaper EVs the same way that the Chinese manufacturers have been up till now, and you push back against the Teslas of the world, that you make good cars with the right controls, with just the right amount of range, that cheaply for people to buy, and that's how you get people out of petrol cars.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is, do we need a square steering wheel? Come on.
As somebody who's got a squarish steering wheel, I'm okay with it.
Okay, I've never had one, so maybe I'm misspeaking, but to me it just looks like, why have we squared it off? It looks like the icon on your iPhone.
It's quite a nice thing to rest your hand on longer journeys, I've got to say.
Right. And there is a lot of buttons on that steering wheel, so that is a good thing.
And ironically, the last VW steering wheels were terrible with the touch-sensitive buttons. They were capacitive. They were bad, so I hope these are actually proper push button.
Yeah, sometimes tech just gets put in for no apparent reason. So no, this looks really good. Come on, VW, I want to see one of these.
Yep, let's have it. Should we do some media?
Let's do some media.
So first in the media, Apple is a new DJ for one of its radio stations. I thought this was interesting.
I think this is cool. So we've got the King here in the UK, King Charles. He's a DJ on Apple Music. I think that's fantastic. Don't you think?
It baffles me slightly. Why is he doing this? Why is he here and not on the BBC?
He should do all of it, but I think it's kind of cool.
I do quite like it. I think it shows it humanises the king to a certain degree, which the royal family definitely need from time to time. And fair play Apple for getting it, I guess. And I haven't listened to it, but I guess it's probably okay.
I haven't listened to it, but I should give it a go. Part of me was going to say it's great showing like a modern king, and then you look at the the set that they've got him on, like a gold gilded mirror in the picture frame in the background, an old school on air sign. It looks like he's got an ink pot and blotter pad on his desk, and there was me thinking this shows a really modern king because he's doing a playlist on Apple Music.
To be fair to the royal family, I think they've kind of embraced technology reasonably well. If you're going back to radio and the early television broadcasts and the kings and queens speeches and all the rest of it, I don't think they've done always the best job engaging with the media. But they've not been bad on sort of seizing technology, and I think this is a good example of that. I mean, we've had Apple Music for quite a while, we've had Apple Radio for quite a while. Why not embrace the new media formats?
Yeah, true. And this is available tomorrow. So there's a trailer in the link, and then you can actually watch this tomorrow, which is quite cool.
So there you go. That's what the king has been up to, and it gets Apple a bit of royal acceptance. Maybe that's why he met with Tim Cook when he came over to convince him to do the radio show.
Could well be, I reckon.
Something that's not so great in the media is the unexpected consequences of the DEI purge in America. So they have been directed to get rid of any woke language from all official government documentation. And unexpected consequences of things like this are apparently the plane that dropped the bombs on, I can't remember if it was Nagasaki or Hiroshima, was called the Enola Gay. And no matter your feelings about that, it's an important historical artifact that's what happened.
Well, it did happen, didn't it?
It definitely did happen. So the plane was called the Enola Gay, and that is now going to be removed as part of the DEI purge in America, which is just mind-blowing to me that this kind of thing falls into that.
I don't know what to say. It just feels strangely bonkers to me. Would that be fair to say?
It's beyond bonkers. I mean, not only is it a terrible, terrible piece of legislation and rule making that you're going to disadvantage people like this by being against diversity, equity, and inclusion, but you take it to this extent.
Yeah, that is the thing, isn't it? You're going to the nth degree with it. It just seems crazy.
And purging your own history. I mean, this is what fascism looks like, isn't it? You rewrite the history books in the way you want them to. This is the equivalent of book burning, deleting all this stuff from archives. It genuinely is.
But it's the name, though, isn't it? Like, why are we deleting the name? I understand it's got the word gay in it, but it just seems
Yeah, exactly. I think you've said it well. Let's move on to something nicer.
That should be our show title.
Moving on to something nicer. This has been talked about before. In fact, I think we talked about it before that Amazon had the rights to Ian M. Banks' books. They had an initial go at producing one of his culture novels called Consider Fleabag. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, it's one of the greatest science fiction books of all time. Consider Fleabag. It is it's a masterwork. It really is.
That's quite a statement.
I will stand by it. I genuinely, it's a phenomenally good book. It's extremely well written. It builds a hell of a universe in a very short space of time, and he thinks on a level for science fiction very rarely seen at this sort of in this sort of book. In the days of Star Wars and Star Trek, he was on another level altogether. And there's concepts in here which other science fiction authors had, like orbitals. I think Larry Niven had them with Ringworld back in the day, that are taken to their logical conclusion, how they work, how they operate, what sort of society you would need to have in order to build something of that magnitude. Anyway, it's a terrific book, and Amazon are having a second go at turning into a TV show. So hopefully they don't mess it up. Hopefully they bring something to screen. I have a bit of time for Amazon when it comes to things like Reacher and Wheel of Time, so I'm slightly optimistic. And if you haven't read Consider Fleabag, get out there and read it.
Yeah, you're making me think. I don't read a huge amount of science fiction. Occasionally I do. You're making me think maybe I need to go and give this a go.
You absolutely need to give this a go. Something else that you might want to give a go, if you watched a Netflix TV show back in the day, is Daredevil. I've been a bit down on Marvel television recently. I don't think they've done a very good job of any of it. Yeah, that might be the right thing to say, of any of it. But the Netflix Daredevil show was terrific, really well done. Charlie Cox and others within that really pulled together some really clever television. And Netflix have brought the original cast back. Marvel have brought the original Netflix cast back, and we have Daredevil Born Again, which premiered last week with 2 episodes. I watched them both last night. Really good.
Yeah, I've never kept up with the Marvel world, and so every time they bring out something else, I'm like, can I watch this? Do I know enough? If you know what I mean, that's always been my concern. Equally, though, I'm not looking for more TV series to watch at the minute, I must confess.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Of note, did you watch Full Metal Jacket back in the day?
I have seen Full Metal Jacket, but a long time ago.
So Private Pile in Full Metal Jacket is Wilson Fisk. He's Vincent D'Onofrio in this.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Anyway, good ratings on Rotten Tomato. 85% from critics, 84% from the audience. It's a good show. It's worth checking out.
Do you need to have seen other Marvel stuff to appreciate it?
You probably would help to have watched the earlier Netflix Daredevil TV show.
Oh, that's a barrier to entry. I might try if I get a minute, because I'm running on the treadmill, and you kind of want. Sometimes it's quite good to have something about an hour long. So this might be up that street. You
don't have to. I think there's a flashback. You'll get an idea what's going on. You get the feeling that Vincent's character, Wilson Fisk, is the bad guy. Daredevil is obviously a slightly conflicted good guy who tries to fight the law from both within a courtroom and then as a vigilante, and how he's given that up, and that's how that's impacted his life. It's pretty good. It's very well acted.
Okay.
Drive to Survive. I think you mentioned this last week as well.
I mentioned it last week. Drive to Survive came out on Friday. It's fantastic. That's it.
That's okay. That's a very short summary. I think we can let that go. I watched my first race of the MotoGP last weekend, so that was fantastic as well. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I wish there was something well produced like this that came along that got people feeling as passionate about bikes as this does about cars, because I have no interest in racing cars at all, but you seem to enjoy this almost as much as the racing, so fair enough.
I think it's quite cool. I watched a little bit with my son last night. There is a bit of swearing in it, which again, why can't we use AI just to bleep out or not show the subtitled swearing on the team radio? It's just really good because you're just reliving last year's season. You're seeing the highlights from it, and you're seeing a bit of stuff behind the scenes you just don't normally see. You know, you're seeing some of the cameras going into meetings. I do wonder how much though is scripted or acted out. You know, how much of it is live, or how much they're doing, and they've got one of the team bosses flipping a burger and his best mates round, and Netflix are there filming it, and how much is he being prompted to ask certain questions. So it does feel more scripted than what it has done, in my opinion, but still kind of interesting. My one wish for the whole thing is, why do you release it 1 week before the season starts again? when there's 10 episodes. You want to do this 10 weeks beforehand, drop one a week, and that's what I would prefer. And I think you'd have people talking about it longer, because you'd be dropping one a week, be a bit more in the socials, but it all comes at once, and you've got 7 days to consume it if you want to consume it before the race starts, for the 25 season. But it's very good, and the production quality, fantastic.
Is Carlos Sainz Jr. related to the rally driver?
Yeah, it's his son.
Hey, there you go. See, I recognise something.
Often you see his dad at the event, and I do like that. Like, you get their parents in, and they're showing clips of their parents and their amazing houses and their cars and their boats that they drive. It's just insane.
Yeah, it's a very different world. I haven't played any games this week, have you?
No, I'm having an incredibly busy time. I've been away a little bit this week, so I'm massively behind, I think, on everything. I'm still waiting for Commander's Origins, and I need to really sit down and have a second coming of Civ 7. I've played it once or maybe twice, and I don't know why. I just don't seem to have had the time.
I haven't found it very sticky. I've tried a couple of goes, and it's not grabbing me in the same way that earlier Civ games. And I know I'm slightly conflicted about it anyway, because I read all the bad reviews and things before I bought it, but I still bought it, and it wasn't cheap, and I really ought to have another go at it. I've played a bit of Call of Duty, but I'm not going to talk about that. Should we just flip straight over and do a main show then?
Yeah, let's do the main show.
So Apple released some stuff this week. This is following a tweet from Tim Cook saying there's something in the air. Are they still called tweets? Following a post from Tim Cook, there's something in the air. So we all knew there was Air stuff coming, and unsurprisingly then they have released the iPad Air, the MacBook Air, and a couple of other bits and pieces as well. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I think, just to summarise, I think Apple have had a good week. I think they've righted a few wrongs, and their lineups are all a little bit simpler, following the iPhone 16e the other week. So with the iPhone 16e, like 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and basically they've got rid of the iPhone 14, the SE, and they've just simplified the lineup, which I really like. And when they still sell the 15, I kind of wish they did the 16 line and that was it. Just go and buy one of these. Don't buy last year's year-old phone. But I do like what they're doing here. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the accessories and we'll work our way up?
Let's get the accessories out of the way. So they quite often in the spring release new watch bands and cases and things like that. But once upon a time they'd release a new colour iPhone as well, wouldn't they? That was like, we got a purple iPhone 14, I think, at one point.
Yeah, and there was a green one at some point. And they were quite cool, but obviously most people bought their iPhone the day it came out, kind of thing. But it was nice they were doing it and trying to keep, I guess, a bit of incentive in their lineup. But I guess that's what they're 16e this time. But we've got some new exciting colours. Have you ordered a pink case for your iPhone?
I have not. I haven't ordered any of these. I very rarely buy these additional things. The only thing that I quite like, the Pride watch bands that come along sometimes. I think they do them in really nice colours. So I had the odd Pride watch band, but I've never bought one of these out of sort of band colours. I think it's quite a strong pink. If you like pink on your iPhone, I think that's a good colour. I never really liked these folio cases to snap on your iPad, so I've never really bothered with one of them.
Can we just pause there for a sec on the folio case? So I looked at this folio case. I do have one of these in they call it denim, like a light blue, because for my iPad Pro you either get black, white, light blue. That is it. And they've released a watermelon one for the regular iPad, and I saw this and I thought, yes, I really like that nice strong colour. I can't get it for mine, so I'm a little cheesed off. But actually, I really like this case. I often take my iPad out of my keyboard case if I'm doing the newspaper. Often I do puzzles on it, read the newspaper. Sometimes I go to a coffee shop with it. And I don't actually want the keyboard on it. I want to use it in a different way, which is why I love my iPad. But this watermelon one, I think looks amazing. But you can only get it on the cheapest iPad. Why can't they do it across the lineup? So I was a bit cheesed off because I would have probably splunged for one, even though I don't need a second case, but I just thought it looked really good.
Lemonade yellow sounds interesting as well, although there isn't a picture there. Just as an aside, what happened to Product Red? Apple used to support AIDS charities with Product Red, and that's all gone.
I used to like some of the Product Red stuff. It's all gone. I don't know why.
I had a Product Red iPhone XR. The family did, and it was a great phone.
Yeah, my dad has that phone, not your phone, but has a Product Red XR phone. It's great. But also, it was a great red. And so if you bought an iPhone case in it, it was a great red. And you were, giving some money to charity. They don't do it anymore.
Just as I scroll through this, that's a hell of a green for your Apple Watch Series 10 in the sort of sage green color. I don't know who would really want that. It's very pastel, fine. It's not cheap. It's $49 for a solo loop. I think that's pretty much as they were. They've also released some Hermes straps, and the prices of Hermes straps always blows me away.
Yeah, because they are the same cost of buying the basic Apple Watch, or you could buy a Hermes strap. Some of them are quite nice, but I've never bought one, and obviously I don't own an Apple Watch anymore.
No, fair. Let's talk about the products themselves then. So they announced new iPads. Coming in the Air was obviously the teaser for this, but they're not just Airs, are they?
No, and I don't know if anybody had this on their bingo card. So first up, we've got the iPad 11 is now out. So this is very much like the previous iPad 10. This is the base level iPad, and it's fantastic. It's in some good colours. This is the iPad most people should just go and buy. If you're iPad curious, this is the one. You know, it's maintaining its current price point of around £350. Like I say, it comes in great colours. It's a good size screen. It's about 10.8 inch screen, even though Apple kind of called it 11 inch. And they've upped the storage, so it comes from 128 instead of 64. So 64 gig storage is now defunct, which is fantastic. And this is a great device. And like I say, most people should buy it. And it looks really modern when you see them. I think they look really good.
Yeah, I'm glad they've upped the storage, because although having bought a couple for the kids at Christmas, I'm feeling a little bit sick that they've doubled the storage on them at that point. But such is life. That's life in the Apple ecosystem. 120 gigs is good. It's still not cheap to get more than that, is it? You know, it's another £100 to double the storage, which I suppose Apple tax wise isn't that bad. But this is a good device, good base starting price. I think there's no issues with it at all, other than I've been told if you're used to one of the higher refresh rate screens, like an iPad Pro or iPad Air screen, that you really do notice how janky the screens are on these compared to the better devices.
Yeah, and I guess it's a bigger screen. Look, I've only had the Pro for a while, but I still think this is the device most people should get. Like, if you're buying something for your kids, this is the one to get. What has blown my mind is you can still buy the first generation Apple Pencil when you buy this device. And they're not just selling it with the new USB-C one. I thought they had tidied that up. But the first generation Apple Pencil is more expensive than the newer one. So for me, I think they should have just done away with that and simplified it. But hey ho, what do I know? If you had a keyboard on though, it is £250 for a keyboard, which is madness, because that's nearly the cost of the iPad all over again. And that's where Apple really needs to get those costs down. I think it's the accessories are just so expensive.
Yeah, I'm maxing this out as we go here, and a base iPad with a keyboard and all the storage you can get on it, and a pencil and a folio comes to £1,127.
Nobody's going to buy that, surely.
That's with cellular and things as well, but that is an awful lot of money for a base iPad.
I completely agree with you. Nobody should buy that. Apple shouldn't even offer that ability to. They should have a big sign going, "Go and get an Air."
Well, this is it. You think they'd upsell you to the next one. And speaking of the next one, they upgraded the Air as well. So what have they done at the Air?
So the Air, largely unchanged from last year. Obviously had a massive refresh last year. It's now gone from an M2 to an M3 chip, which again, I didn't see that coming quite so quickly, because obviously we had a whole year where they did no iPad updates, and then this year we get them in quick succession. So it's great they're keeping it refreshed. This obviously closes the gap between this and the Pro, I think, now, because the Pro's an M4, this is an M3. If you're really into the Apple ecosystem and you want to be able to do Stage Manager and plug in an external display, this is probably the iPad you should buy, because it does 90% of what the iPad Pro does. I was going to say not quite at the same cost, but it's still not a cheap device. But this is the one. You can get it in some colours. They're not fantastic. They're a bit, in my opinion, a bit wishy-washy. But if you pick, say, a Starlight one, you went for 256 storage, and you had Wi-Fi on it, and that's about £850. Wi-Fi and cellular, sorry. So I think that's the device most people should buy. But then you add a keyboard on it, it's another £270. Those keyboards are just, in my opinion, just too expensive, I think. But you can always buy those things later. So if you are using it more and more and more, you can always get the keyboard later. You can always buy the pencil later. So that's what I'd recommend. And these will get have a period where they're cheaper on Amazon, won't they? You know, you'll be able to pick them up in a sale. But it's great to see them actually invest in the lineup. I do wonder sometimes though whether the iPad lineup has too many iPads in it for a small percentage of what is Apple's business. You know, you've got the mini, the regular iPad, the Air, and the Pro. It's 4 lines of iPads. But what I do think is good though is they've got rid of all the old iPads. They've cleaned up the keyboards a little bit. They're all largely the same now. They've really tidied the lineup up now, so it makes a lot more sense. I think it's great Apple to get rid of older models, so you just buy the current model. So now when you send somebody in to buy something, you know they're buying something that's fairly recent within the last 12 months that's been updated, rather than buying an iPad 10 from 3 years ago. So I do like what they're doing. I think Apple is really starting to cleanse the lineup a little more like it used to be when they bring out a new product and the old ones would just disappear overnight and they'd be forgotten.
I think there's a real dichotomy in the iPad line. As I sit here configuring the prices for them, and to get this to a decent level, I was thinking you want at least 256 gigs. If you're going to have an iPad, you may as well have cellular. Why not? Tethering your phone's a pain. You may as well get the pencil. You may as well get the keyboard.
Cellular's fantastic. I love it.
But that comes to 928 quid with just like sensible options, not going crazy on the storage. And that gives you the same amount of storage as a base iPad, MacBook Air, as we're going to talk about shortly. I think this that I've configured here, if you're going to go for an iPad, is more than enough iPad for anyone ever. If you're a very light iPad user and all you want is to be able to read a book and watch a bit of Netflix, go for the base model. Don't add any storage. Don't spend any more than 328 quid. If you're a serious iPad user, I think this is the one to go for. I don't think anybody should be spending as much as you have on your M4 iPad Pro. This is the sweet spot for me, I think. And the sweet spot is still a bit rich for my blood, but I think this is where people should be.
I agree with everything you've just said, and I'm a massive iPad user. I shouldn't have bought the Pro. I do love it, and I was happy to spend a bit of money on it. And I would recommend people get the smaller one. I think the 13-inch one is nice if you're using it as a laptop, but it's a bit unwieldy. And what I've really enjoyed with the 11-inch sort of size, which they all come in, is it's great if you want to sit with it with a pencil. Do, like I said, read the newspaper, do puzzles on it, do a drawing, make some notes. It is a fantastic device to use in that more hybrid environment, whereas for me the 13-inch one was just a bit too big of a canvas for that. But I think they're good devices. I think they've just got too many of them now.
And they've updated the Magic Keyboard as well.
Yes, this is for the Air. The Magic Keyboard on the Air is now largely the same as the M4 Pro one, I think is where we're going. It's got the same function row, the bigger trackpad, better manufacturing. So they're good, but there's not much difference between the Air and the Pro. That's the problem.
It's not cheap, is it?
No, none of the accessories are cheap. It is good you can add them later, but they're not cheap at all.
No, at least you go to the computer, you get, well, most computers you get a keyboard built in. This, I think it's a good upgrade. It probably needed the processor upgrade, sort of tweaks. We know that there was manufacturing issues with the earlier version of this keyboard. We've talked before that you've been through at least one of them and it's broken, so I hope they've made it more reliable.
The one I got with the M4 Pro has been fantastic. The previous generation keyboards weren't fantastic, and they were very heavy, whereas these newer ones are a bit lighter.
There we go. Should we move on to the Macs?
Yeah, let's do Macs. So we've had iPad Airs, now we've got MacBook Airs.
We've got MacBook Airs, and sort of the big thing is that they've now got M4s in them. They've upgraded the bus. They're now Thunderbolt for the better chip, the Thunderbolt 5 and Thunderbolt 4 for the non Pro Max. I get a bit mixed up with it between the versions, but the cheapest one is Thunderbolt 4. The more expensive one is Thunderbolt 5. They made some tweaks to the camera and stuff like that.
Hang on, no, all of the Airs are Thunderbolt 4.
All of theirs, not even the one with the better chip. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I thought they'd have
because all the Airs just get the regular M4. None of them get the better chip. You're thinking of when we bought our Mac Minis. If you bought the Pro chip, you got Thunderbolt 5. So all the Airs, Thunderbolt 4 across the lineup. All of them are roughly the same. You can pick 13 or 15 inch, and then it's just really down to storage and memory, isn't it? Predominantly.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, not to give you duff information. I think it's a good, solid computer, and they've dropped the price by $100 or 100 quid as well.
Yes, what's great here is they've got rid of the M2 one that was hanging around. They got rid of the M3 one, and it's just now the M4 MacBook Air. So again, if somebody goes and buys a MacBook Air, you know they're going to come out with a really good one. Even the base one is pretty good, and that's at $9,990 or pounds. You do only get 256 storage. The storage there are still a little scrimping on. It should be 512 in my opinion on a Mac, but 16 gig of RAM in that, which is great because obviously they upped that recently. These are great. These MacBook Airs look fantastic. I think they look awesome. I would buy one of these in a heartbeat if I needed a computer tomorrow.
If I wanted a Mac tomorrow, I would buy one of these. I think it does almost everything. And the thing they have fixed is now they can drive 2 displays at the same time as having the internal display switched on. So better chip, ability to handle more monitors, better webcam. It's kind of a no-brainer. If you're advising anybody to buy a Mac, this is the Mac they should probably buy.
And a great price point, £1,000 to get all of that. That's a really well-made laptop. And there'll be educational discount, and there will be deals probably on Amazon at some point, or your other shopping partner of choice. But what a great device I think that is. That is a device 80% of people should go out and buy probably. That will do what most people need. If you need a Pro. And also they're super light and really portable. 13-inch one of those I'd have every day of the week. And
it comes in a new colour.
Yeah, it's quite nice. It's quite a light blue, but looks kind of cool. I think that or Midnight would tease me if I would buy one.
Yeah, I think the Midnight one was always the one I had my eye on if it was going to go for an Air. I think it's a nice colour, a bit fingerprinty from what all the reviews say.
That would be the problem. But I do like the silver. I must confess, I really like the silver with the black logo on it. I think that looks smart. It's a classic look for Apple, I think.
Yeah, it is. And I think silver is certainly the first MacBook Pro I had was in a very silver. My more modern ones have been the darker colour on that because I quite like that. And I really liked the MacBook Black Book when that came along as well, because we get so used to Apple computers just being white or silver. Yeah,
especially the consumer ones were white generally, weren't they? And the Pros were aluminium or titanium.
The thing I don't understand is we know Apple can anodize aluminium into all sorts of interesting colours because the iPhone 16 is in some beautiful colours. Why can't we have that on our MacBook Airs?
Do you remember the iPods used to be, was it chromatic? I can't remember what they called it. And they looked amazing, really vivid colours. I don't know. Maybe they know more than we do, and people, whilst they say they want them, wouldn't actually buy them.
Maybe not. Anyway, if you buy the Sky Blue one, it comes with a nice Sky Blue USB braided cable as well as one of the features of it, and it has a new 12 megapixel camera. Now, I use Center Stage, or I tried to use Center Stage on my Apple Studio display at work, and it's a terrible feature. It just randomly wanders around the room locking on people's faces. It'll zoom in and out. I just switch it off most of the time.
Yeah, I must confess I don't use it on my iPad when I'm doing conference calls. I've been on calls where others have it, and I find it just can zoom into people's faces a bit much or move around. It's a little bit too keen on tracking people, I find. So I generally haven't used it. But I guess they've now got the smarts to bring that to this clamshell notebook.
So for me, I think the MacBook Air is the computer people should buy. I think the smaller one is what you want because you want portability. You can always plug it into a bigger screen, or you can take one of those extra screens or your iPad, because a lot of people have both, and screen share onto that. I would get an SSD upgrade though. I don't think 256 is enough in a modern computer, so go for the 512 as well.
I think even if you're using this as a fairly ephemeral laptop, you need the 512. So you want the middle of the road one, which is £200, $200 more expensive than the base. That's the one most people should go out and get, in my opinion.
I agree. And then just take some external storage with you as well. It's slightly annoying this doesn't come with an SD card as well. It's less of an issue than it used to be, but because it's easy enough to find USB-C accessories these days. But I think that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, and I think so. They've got three. They've got 999, which is 256 storage. They've got a middle one, which is 512 storage, both with 16 gig of RAM. And then they've got a slightly more expensive one with 24 gig of RAM, but still 512. They should have made the expensive one 24 gig of RAM and a terabyte. I know it'd be another £200 on top, say, but they should just had, this is the maxed out MacBook Air, here's the basic MacBook Air, and there's one in the middle, whereas you can't get the terabyte storage unless you do a custom config, which I think is a shame. I think they've missed a trick.
Yeah, and how does this now compare to the MacBook Pro is the question.
Well, it's a lot lighter.
Yeah, and that is a factor for sure. I mean, making things out of metal does make a difference to the weight of your computers, doesn't it? The MacBook Pro starts at $1,600 for £1,600. So, yeah, I think, and that nobody should buy it. Well, it's not as bad as it used to be, but the base MacBook Pro isn't the one you want. You want at least to step up to the next model up.
Yeah, the MacBook Pro, in my opinion, should start with a terabyte, which is what the one step up is. That's the one most people should get, is that terabyte storage. If you're buying a Pro, you know you need it, so you should get the one step up. And obviously the Pro does have a few extra ports, and it's got the better Retina screen. It does the would you call it pro refresh rate? Promotion.
Promotion.
Promotion. So that one's good, but it's a lot heavier. I find my MacBook Pro a lot heavier. So I would probably get an Air if it was me, but hey ho.
I think an Air does 99.9% of what anybody would want to do. Just get the bigger SSD in it. I don't think you need a terabyte yet, but you certainly need 512. You're going to run out of 256 almost instantly.
Yeah, it'll be frustrating.
It would. However, they're not the only computers that Apple announced. They also announced refreshed Mac Studios.
Which I didn't think this was going to come this week. And they've got some interesting choices here as well.
Yeah, there's definitely been some choices made with these. So these come in an M4 Max for the cheaper one, but an M3 Ultra for the top spec best Mac you can buy at the moment.
Yeah, so just as a refresher, the Apple chips usually come in M whatever number, that's the base model chip. Then you get M whatever Pro, then M Max, and then M Ultra. And they're saying for the M4 generation that there's no Ultra chip basically, but we've had the M3 generation for a little while now, about a year or so, and they didn't announce an Ultra chip in anything, and then all of a sudden they've now brought the Ultra chip out at the time when we thought the M3 was probably going to go away and everything across the board was going to be an M4 of some shape or form, and that's obviously not the case. So you've got the M4 Max in the cheaper one, which is about £2,000 or dollars, and then you've got the M3 Ultra in one that's twice the price, about £4,000 or dollars. So quite interesting. Obviously, you get more RAM and more hard drive for that. They both have Thunderbolt 5, which is great to see Thunderbolt 5 across the lineup. These are pro desktops. These look great, I think. You and I obviously both bought a Mac Mini, and I did have a moment of, should I wait for the Studio to come out? Maybe I should have done. For me, it would probably be similar money to get the Studio. But do you know what I really like? I really like how small the Mac Mini is because I take it between my shed and my house and things. So I'm quite happy I didn't wait and splurge the extra money because I probably don't need it. But that M4 Mac Studio is an amazing desktop for probably most people.
I agree, and I had that same moment where I think I spent almost as much on configuring my Mac Mini because I didn't go for the base one. I went for the Thunderbolt 5 one, as this costs. I'm not that regretful, frankly. Mac Studio is a lot bigger, sort of footprint-wise. This seems to be more upgradable than a Mac Studio as well. From the teardowns I've seen of people who've ripped them apart and been able to swap out SSDs and done things within them to make them better, it is more upgradable than a Mac Studio, so that's interesting as well. I think if you're the kind of person that needs an M3 Ultra at $4,000/pounds, you know exactly who you are. And the only thing I think that's particularly interesting about this machine is for development of LLMs. So LLMs depend on GPU memory. Apple's architecture allows you to say how much video RAM you have or GPU system RAM you have because it's a unified architecture. So you can run these larger LLMs in lots of memory very easily with these, even though they don't have the compute of an NVIDIA card or something like that. What actually lets them down, and I watched somebody do this, is bandwidth. If you build a cluster of these at $4,000 a pop, you have to network them with Thunderbolt 5 to get the fastest possible bandwidth, whereas your ChatGPT's OpenAI, Google Gemini will be using servers with 100 gig or faster interconnects between them, as well as lots of memory. So actually, if you're an LLM developer, that one makes sense. But I think for everybody else, you want to be looking at the M4 Max. Nobody really needs an Ultra unless you're doing that.
Yeah, and the Geekbench scores have largely said there's not a huge difference between the M4 Max and the M3 Ultra, which you kind of expect. You've got the top of one generation and the highish end of the next generation. You'd expect them to be overlapping a little bit as the generations move on. So it's odd, I think, that they've come out with this M3 Ultra, but it is what it is. It's great they're updating the lineup, though. I think I give Apple the kudos just to keep the lineup updated because they haven't done it for a couple of years with the Studio. So it's nice to see them moving it forwards. I was hoping for the Studio display, I must confess, but it looks like I'm going to have to wait a little bit longer there.
You're going to have to wait a bit longer. They've got to have something else to announce this year. Yeah, they've said this, so not every generation will see an Ultra chip. I thought we were done with the M3. I was surprised to see it in the iPad. Frankly, I thought we were just going to move on because it was expensive, but there's plenty of M3s around now.
Yeah, for whatever reason, we were led to believe it was an expensive chip to produce, but they've put it obviously in the iPad and in this. I don't know. I'm really pleased what Apple have done this week. They've released loads of stuff. They've updated loads of lineups. They've cleaned up the lineups. It's great to see lots more stuff supporting Apple Intelligence, obviously, with the iPads. But weirdly, just one anomaly there is the base iPad doesn't support Apple Intelligence. I very much thought we had a period where Apple kind of said internally, right, no new devices that don't support Apple Intelligence, but obviously that's not the case. So maybe they've realised they can do that now because nobody's using it.
Maybe so. Anything else for our main show? I think we've talked about the products. That's a decent roundup.
Yeah, and what also is good with the products, we haven't seen any price increases yet. So I think that's good because sometimes an updated model will come out and they'll push it up. But with the MacBooks, they've gone down slightly. Everything else is maintained, which again, I think this is great updates all around.
Hey, we saw a price decrease on the MacBook Air.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I mean. They brought it down for the new model, whereas last year that was filled by keeping the previous generation around. So I think they've, to be fair to Apple, I think they've absolutely nailed it this time around.
Yes, they have. Should we do an app of the week?
Go for it.
Very simple this week. If you've got any spirits kicking around in your cocktail cabinet that you're not sure what to do, it's called Drinkable. It's an open source app. You put in what you've got lying around and it spits back what cocktails you can make out of what you've got. Rather than the other way around, I want to make a martini, it says you've got to have this. This, you say you've got rum and gin and some Angostura bitters, and it will come up with a cocktail for you based on that. It's open source. You can run it yourself. You can run it on the App Store, Google Play, or even on F-Droid, which is the completely open source version of Android where there has been de-Googlified. So I think this is a really cool little project and worth checking out if you've got some spare booze lying around.
Cool. Yeah, okay, I might send that to my wife, actually. She quite likes making cocktails. So that looks cool.
But it's always quite nice to see these things, particularly if you want to see how cross-platform apps are built. You can check out the GitHub here and you can see what's been going on with that. Lots of JavaScript.
I hate JavaScript. I must confess, I had never heard of F-Droid until you've just mentioned it.
Really? It's worth checking out. If you've got a Pixel phone, you can install F-Droid and de-Googlefy your life if you want to get away from that.
Okay, interesting. I just hadn't heard of it. Cool.
The really clever thing about it, and this is the kind of thing I wish the iPads would do, is that you can virtualize Android. So you can actually pretend in a container to run Android apps. So if you still want your banking app from the Play Store, you can do that. So you can de-Google your life, but in some areas where there's no getting away from Google, because your bank probably won't let you run a HSBC app on, then you can actually still do that. I think it's really clever.
That's quite cool. I like the sound of that.
So something we've already talked about for Thing of the Week.
Yeah, my Thing of the Week. Surprised nobody is Drive to Survive. Absolutely loved it. If you're into F1, watch it. If you're not into F1, watch it, because apparently this is how they got lots and lots of people into F1. So would recommend.
Okay, we've already talked about this. I feel this is a repetition of material for this podcast.
It might be. It's been a slow week. What can I say? Work's been busy, so I haven't consumed any games or any media other than Drive to Survive.
I think we can call that a show, Chris.
Yeah, let's do it. So if you want to get in contact, Rod is at g5maniac@mastodon.scot. He's also on Bluesky, where he's at g5maniac.bsky.social. I'm on Mastodon, where I am at _CJP at mastodon.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to wakefromsleep.com and click on the YouTube link. Or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.